everybody, and welcome to The Scares That Shaped Us, a podcast about horror writers and the stories that made them. I'm your host, Matthew Jackson, and today we are joined by a rising star in the horror world. You will know her from her debut collection, The Nightmare Box and Other Stories from 2024. Her new book is called Muneca. It is available right now wherever you get your books. Cynthia Gomez, welcome to the show.
Hello. I've been really looking forward to this. I mean, we didn't set it up that many days ago, but I'm really looking forward to this. And I'm a huge fan of the pod. So thank you very much for having me. This is going
Thank
to
you.
be fun.
Thank you so much. I'm a huge fan of your book. I must
Thank
confess,
you.
I had not read The Nightmare Box. I knew you from social media, and I was like, I need to read some of Cynthia's stuff because she's so kind on social media and kind about the podcast. And I saw you had this book coming up, and I sort of scrambled like, hey, can we get you on the show? Because I want to read this book. And picked it up the day it was released, came out June 2nd, so just a few days ago. Read it in one night,
Wow.
partly because it's short and partly because it's good. But I'm a huge fan of this book. It's wonderful. It's gothic. It's romantic. It is scary. For listeners who may not know about this book yet, will you give everyone a little taste of what they can expect?
Sure. So thank you for all your kind words about the book too. It's a little shocking is not quite the right word. I'm still trying to absorb it all. I feel a little bit like, the once in a lifetime Talking Head song. This is not my beautiful house. So thank you. All right, Muñeca. It's a Gothic novel set in 1968 in the Bay Area, mostly in Oakland. And our narrator is named Nati, and she is a young woman who hears that the daughter of the house where she and her mom used to work sometimes as a maid, has fallen ill from some kind of a mysterious affliction. She's paralyzed, can't move, can't talk. And our narrator, Nati, says, I think it's dark magic. And she knows this because she used to mess around with magic herself. So she cooks up this plan. She's going to get a job as the caretaker and free the girl, break the spell, get a handsome reward, and then go back to her life clean and, easy peasy. And of course, it doesn't happen that way. And it gets a lot more complicated than that, including, but not limited to, that she's starting to fall for the young woman, Violeta.
So, muñeca, for those who don't know, means doll, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And that is based on some spoilery stuff, but also based on this woman Violeta simply being in a catatonic state when we discover her. And she's been placed that way by forces that the novel slowly reveals. This is a very short book. This is my edition. The Kindle edition was under 200 pages,
Mm-hmm.
and yet we have this strange, witchy, gothic love story between Nati and Violeta, this catatonic woman. We have Spanish colonialism in the Bay Area. We have a revenge narrative. We have witchcraft. We have systems of power and the ways in which people who work in sort of domestic servitude are able to move through the corridors of power in their own way. There is so much going on here. Where does the book start for you as a writer? What was the first seed of it?
So the first seed, let's see, I will give the spoiler-free version
Okay.
because the image that started this was just an image of a woman who is in Violeta's state, essentially catatonic, but her mind is fully active. She's trapped in her body. There is apparently an actual syndrome called locked-in syndrome
Yeah.
that exists where people have very little motor control, but they're still thinking and interacting with the world however they can. But so I started with that image of a woman who can only blink, can't talk. She can breathe on her own just because I didn't want to mess around with a breathing machine. And so the question was, how did she get that way? Did somebody put her that way? If so, why did they put her that way? How did they put her that way? And then what would it mean for someone to come in to try to free her? And I won't get into the whether someone put her that way, and if so, why, because that's a little bit spoilery. But how was easy because I like magic and I like witchcraft. So that was pretty easy. And I had written a character who is kind of similar to the grandma character in some ways. in the Nightmare Box. The title story, the Nightmare Box itself, has a witch character, and so I already had a lot of that kind of that I could borrow from / steal from. And then when I started thinking about who would come in to try to free her, that's when I really knew I had something, because it's kind of fairy tale-y already, right? You got Sleeping Beauty, you're going to come in, or, you know, or Snow White, right? And so I knew I didn't want the would-be rescuer to be a dude, because that's boring and it's not what I'm interested in writing about. And I also realized that I kind of had the seed for a Gothic novel, because it's very, you know, woman trapped in her bed in a house where there's all kinds of possible secrets, etc., to be uncovered. And so I figured out that this was very Gothic. And that's when I realized that I could do something that I've been wanting to write about for years, which is the colonial history that you talked about, and the irony that on the one hand, the land that I'm sitting on right now, California, it used to belong to Native Americans and then was stolen and given to the Spaniards. And then when that country became Mexico and then the US stole Mexico's land, then all of a sudden the racial hierarchy got reshuffled. And so I was really excited when I could put all those things together. So that's the long answer to the seed.
Well, and you have that other wonderful Gothic touch of a proud family, meaning Violetta's family, that has fallen on hard times. You have the layer that's extremely Gothic of they have lost their wealth, but they still have their prestige. So they had to find Violetta a husband who would have the wealth that would match their prestige. And he's from Cuba, and he made his money amid Castro taking over Cuba. So there's all sorts of moral and ethical things there. But I want to talk about, you mentioned the grandmother, and she is my favorite character in the book. I love her so much. There, just to be clear for listeners, there are several flashbacks in the book in which we get to see where Nati learned about witchcraft to begin with, which is through her grandmother. And these are just basically conversations, demonstrations, what have you, that she remembers of her grandmother. And there's a scene in this book that I think, if you had just published it as a short story, I would have been like, that's a brilliant short story. And it just begins with Nati asking her grandmother, I don't know if she says, do you know how to kill someone, or have you ever killed someone?
It's the latter.
Okay, yeah. Have you ever killed someone? And the way Grandma answers that question is just a beautiful little sub-narrative in and of itself. Where does Grandma come from for you?
Oh boy. So she was one of the later additions. I always knew that there would be that, well, not always, but fairly early on, I knew that Nati was going to have to go back into her past, just because, again, that's what we do in the Gothic so much, right?
Yep.
And that would be part of the twisty narrative that I could put in there. But again, part of Grandma came from this character who's the character in the title story of the Nightmare Box and short stories. But there's some differences, including that the character in the Nightmare Box does wrestle with morality in a way that Grandma doesn't. But where she came from is just that it started to be really fun to me to think about a character who does not have any conventional morality, who has power but no conventional morality. Like Grandma, we can swear on this podcast, right? I'm pretty sure I've heard people swear before. Okay.
Let it rip. Yeah.
Yeah, Grandma does not give a fuck.
Yeah.
And it's very refreshing to write. Now, I've said about Grandma many times that I wouldn't want to be in a dark alley with her, yeah. But you know, that doesn't mean that she's not fascinating to write or to think about. And it's a little bit, you tease the possibility of autobiographical. Well, part of the model was, let me look at my own grandparents and think of how I could be exactly the opposite in every possible way. So my actual grandparents were on both sides. My grandfather on my dad's side was not a nice man, so we'll have to exempt him from the list. But otherwise, I had 3 wonderful grandparents who were kind, and kind who would like shove food at you as soon as you walked in the door, and you know, in every possible way, the polar opposite of Grandma. So it was just refreshing to think about something so different from my own experience and so different from the way that grandparents are supposed to be in fiction, and just kind of play with that. And there's a whole longer class explanation for Grandma, but that involves all the other characters too. So maybe we'll have time for that.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is one of the other wonderful things about the book, and we can talk about it now if you want, because I love um like you could have just had you could have just gotten Nati to this house through happenstance. She could have answered an ad in the paper. She could have done. There could have been any number of ways you could have gotten her here with Violetta, but
Mhm.
in the Gothic tradition, it's like, no, they have a history. Nati knows this house because she used to
Yeah,
come to the house and clean it with her mother. She was a domestic servant in this mansion of very proudly white European Spanish colonial family. Which white European Spaniards versus Mexicans is its own can of worms. Um, as someone who's grown up in Texas knows, but it's I am fascinated by the way you weave in all of the little things Nati knows about the dynamics of this family based on her history there. How important was it for you to have that class element to help drive the narrative? Because like I said, you could have just gotten Nati to the house in some other way, and they could have been meeting for the
sure.
first time.
Sure. And the first part of your question about how Nutley came to be that to come to that house and that having to do with the past, for me, that was not so much in keeping with Gothic elements as it was that I couldn't really swallow why Nutley would take so much risk for a total stranger.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted her to have some level of sympathy with Violetta, even if the relationship that develops when Nati does come to the house to try to free Violetta, that relationship does develop. It wasn't that fully developed in the past, but I remember thinking she's got to have some connection with that house because otherwise I couldn't buy somebody who was basically as well established as Nati and also not terribly altruistic to go to all that trouble for somebody that she never knew. But that does bring in the whole past part. And then that's what added a whole layer of this being a family that has done her mother wrong, that has mistreated her and her mother, that has seen her as invisible, and that invisibility actually being something that she can turn to her advantage, which is what Grandma is all about. Right? Grandma says, to certain people, women like us will always be invisible, which is the flip side of what her mom says at the beginning. Grandma and mom have polar opposite morality in basically every way that matters. But I feel like I've strayed a little bit from your initial question, which I do a lot.
No, that's totally fine. One thing I love about it as well is this is all very very rooted and real within the realm of these cultures that these characters exist in, and yet it is also something straight out of Henry James. Which brings me, I guess, to my next question: is who are your major? We're seeing a lot of Gothic creeping back into fiction, and a lot of it is Latin Gothic. Excuse me. Uh, with you and Isabel Cañas does this, Silvio Moreno Garcia does this. But going back to your, just as a fan, who are your big Gothic touchstones that you go back to?
Ooh, I love it. So when I was sketching this out, I had a joking running title that I called what is it? When Rebecca Bluebeard sat by the firelight with the invisible man. And Firelight is actually this very silly 1997 movie with Sophie Marceau, where there's a character who's locked in, right? And in that, it's unrealistic in the way it comes through in that, but it brings that trope in. And Sarah Waters is going to be on the top of that list for sure. So there were two huge touchstones. I've read everything by Sarah Waters. Sarah Waters, if you somehow this reaches you on the ether, please write your next book and I'll be there. But The Little Stranger and also Fingersmith for very different reasons. And they're both just wonderful books. Fingersmith is very like twisty, turny. Somebody's gonna come into this isolated house with wealth that's kind of rotting the characters, and that both represents an opportunity and a threat. And yet, because it's Sarah Waters, when two women enter into this situation and who's screwing over whom and who's going to try to cheat whom, that becomes very twisty turny, and there's all kinds of yearning and forbidden lust, and I won't say more. But that was so much a touchstone, was Fingersmith. And then the other was The Little Stranger, which is really different. For one thing, it's not queer. It's the only, as far as I know, the only non-queer novel that Sarah Waters has written. And I love The Little Stranger because it makes class very, very explicit in ways that I feel like the earlier Gothic texts, they can't help but talk about class because it's so much a part of it.
Yeah.
It's really, really hard to imagine the Gothic without class tension. But in The Little Stranger, it's extremely explicit. It's this decaying old wealth family
Yep.
trying desperately to hang on to their position in a world where things have shifted around them. And the character who comes in, the doctor who's never named in The Little Stranger. I don't know if you have you read it?
I have not.
It's a wonderful book. I think you would dig it. It's not horror, but it is Gothic. And the doctor is never named, which I wonder could possibly come from Rebecca, where also we never learn the second Mrs. De Winter's
Right.
name.
Yeah.
And there's something there about the liminal class figure coming in and upsetting everything. But The Little Stranger is full of this idea of that wealth being rotten to its core, and that a liminal class figure coming in can upset everything. And that's just like, it's so delicious for the Gothic. And I had so much fun with that part of it.
So we're talking about touchstones, so I think it's probably a good place to segue over to our topic for this episode. We're talking about one of the all timers today, everybody. We're going to talk about Rosemary's Baby, a best-selling novel turned into a hit movie, probably one of the best book to film adaptations in all of horror. Um, Novel was written by Ira Levin, published in 1967. The film was written and directed by Roman Polanski, released in 1968, starring Mia Farrow as Rosemary. Um, it's an all timer. It's a classic. It's on if you make a list of the 10 greatest horror movies of all time, it's probably, if not on that list, then close to it. Um, Cynthia, what do you remember about your first experience of Rosemary's Baby?
So I was 19, and I was with my first real boyfriend, as if we count real boyfriends as, someone who I dated longer than like 2 weeks, and my first love. And we both loved horror movies. So we watched a lot of them. And I knew, because I had seen some documentary with snippets from a bunch of horror movies, I knew that the basic premise of Rosemary's Baby has something to do with Satanists and babies, and that's kind of that's the sum total of it. So I came in pretty clean, and it became just indelible. It's the tension is so slow, and the thing that sticks with me every single time I reread the book or rewatch the movie is how every single so many of Rosemary's doubts could be explained away. There could
Mm,
always be a rational explanation for what's happening until the coincidences pile up and pile up and pile up. But even then, I can imagine how someone coming in from the outside would listen to the whole story and say, but this just seems too far-fetched, this Satanism thing, right?
yeah.
And so I love that because it doesn't depend on people being stupid, and it doesn't depend on people, like making ridiculous choices that we wouldn't make. But it's a person who is using her best knowledge and ability and trying to figure out what happens, and she doesn't really put it together until it's too goddamn late. What
Yeah.
about you?
Oh, my first experience. It's funny that you mentioned a documentary with snippets. And this is coming up a lot in my life in the past couple of weeks. I don't know why, but
Hmm.
so anyone who listens to the show knows, like, no horror movies in my house as a kid. That was not a thing. By my like late teens, I'm starting to sort of get together knowledge of horror movies and figuring out what are the ones I need to see, starting to get
Hmm.
my own money, go to the video store, all that. And Bravo's 100 Scariest Movie Moments comes on cable. And for those who don't know, it was a documentary special was like 5 parts that Bravo aired, I think in 2003 or somewhere around there, because I was like 16 or so when it came out. So um and it was just a bunch of celebrities talking about doing a countdown of the 100 scariest movie moments. And it was like it was my crash course. It was just everything. And the only trick was a lot of the movies were spoiled in the documentary. And yeah, Rosemary's Baby is up there on. I don't remember where it ranks, but it was definitely brought up, and it was um oh, this is the movie about a woman who believes that she's pregnant with the Antichrist. And I was right at that age where I was still going to church, but I was starting to kind of get a little more agnostic, and I was fascinated by Satanism and fascinated by the idea that any of this could be real. So it was right up my alley. So pretty soon after that, went to the video store, rented it, watched it, loved it in spite of, I think a lot of my early horror tastes were for movies that very much went to the throat right away. I was big into slashers because you put on a Friday the 13th or Halloween, you're going to get blood and guts right away. So that was kind of my drive as a teenager. But this is such a slow burn. It is eerie and tense and awkward and darkly funny, but it's not scary in the way that a Friday the 13th is scary, or a Hellraiser is scary, or even The Exorcist is scary. It is much more about this woman's state of mind and what it means, and the things that she has to go through to try to prove or disprove her state of mind. So yeah, I was also instantly hooked, and then went back and read the book. And for those who don't know about Ira Levin, like Ira Levin in the 60s in particular was Mr. High Concept. Ira Levin could come in and say, "I'm going to do this, and it's going to be a satire slash commentary on this," and he would just execute it flawlessly. Like he did Rosemary's Baby. What if you're pregnant with the Antichrist? He did the Stepford Wives. What if the only way to have a perfect trad wife, we'd call it now, is to just make them all robots? What if he did The Boys from Brazil? What if Joseph Mengele went to South America and cloned Hitler a bunch of times?
Whoa, I managed to not hear about that one.
You don't know about The Boys from Brazil? Oh man,
No.
The Boys from Brazil
Okay.
is so it's sci-fi horror, and it's about this old Jewish Nazi hunter who is trying to find Joseph Mengele, who is hiding out in South America, which he did in real life, and he discovers this plot that Mengele has to clone not just one Hitler, but dozens. He makes dozens of Hitler clones and places them in homes around the world that mimic Adolf Hitler's own childhood home environment as much as possible. The idea being, if you clone Hitler, put him in the same environment that produced Hitler, you could get another Hitler.
Wow.
It is so yeah, that's Ira Levin, everybody. Like he is that guy who would come up with these like wild concepts and then produce these like Swiss watch precise thrillers out of them. And Rosemary's Baby is one of those. I'm sorry,
Okay,
I just derailed the podcast talking about The Boys from Brazil, didn't I?
well, I'm very happy to. I don't know if it's quite my style of book, but it just deepens my appreciation for Ira Levin. And I already loved him.
Yeah.
I've seen 3 of his movie adaptations and read 2 of his books. I haven't read A Kiss Before Dying, but I'm going to. Um, and and there's this thread of misogyny that runs through. I don't know if it in The Boys from Brazil, but and when I say thread of misogyny, I mean that misogyny as a theme, not his
Yes.
misogyny.
Yes.
In other words, I would describe Rosemary's Baby and Stepford Wives as very feminist books, or at least books about the oppression of women. And it feels like that's definitely a thread that runs through a lot of his stuff. We're not going to talk about Sliver. That's yeah. We're the less said about that, the better. In fact,
Yeah.
we're moving right on.
Well, yeah. The Voice from Brazil is a little bit more about. It's a Jewish writer writing in the 1970s about the sort of sensationalism of Nazism and
Mhm.
the way that Jewish people have to sort of sit back and look at the world and go, no, 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 this is still a problem. This is it's not gone just because Hitler died. It's like still a thing. It's not very relevant at all in 2026, but um,
No,
yeah.
no.
No, it's less about misogyny and it's more about anti-Semitism and more importantly, like the sensationalizing of in writing this sensational book, he writes sort of about the sensationalism of Nazis and the way that Nazis became
Mm.
objects of fascination in the public eye in the years after World War II. But anyway, Rosemary's Baby. Um, this is also a book in the Gothic tradition, in that it is first of all, it takes place in a big, creepy mansion-like apartment building. It's called the Bramford in the book and the film, but it is based on the Dakota, which is a real gargoyle-covered apartment building in New York City. It's where John Lennon lived at the time of his death. Uh, it's so it's got that going for it. It has that setting, and it also has these issues of class because Rosemary and her husband Guy do not have a ton of money. They're not necessarily well off. They're trying to make the economics of having a baby work. And when we meet them, I don't remember if this happens in the film, but in the book, they already have a place lined up. Like they
Mhm.
figured out an affordable place to live that will be a good spot for them to start a family. And they get this call because they were on the waiting list for the Bramford, and a space opens up, and it's not what they need. It doesn't quite have the same space, and it will cost more. But Rosemary is so over the moon with the idea that she could live in a place like this that she persuades Guy, her husband, to go see it, and they end up taking it. And then she is plunged into this nightmare. Um, and it is that classic sort of thing of in a Gothic story of old money, wealthy people, all these weird denizens of the Bramford looking at
Mm.
Rosemary like, oh, bless your heart. You're just starting out. You're going to do fine. We're going to help you. But it's instantly amplified by this sense of the grotesque in everything from the gargoyles on the building to the way that these people look and dress and behave around Rosemary. Like they immediately take an ownership of her, which is its own sort of class thing. I'm monopolizing the conversation, so I'm gonna hand it back to you and tell me what sticks out to you about why this story works so well in establishing these Gothic tensions right away.
Well, I mean, I was sitting still listening because what you're saying is fascinating on the old money versus new money aspect. And so if there's any reason, I don't know if it's fine to read the first line of the book of
Oh yeah,
copyright issues,
no,
etc.
go for it.
So the very first sentence is Rosemary and Guy Woodhouse had signed a lease on a 5-room apartment in a geometric white house on First Avenue when they received word that a 4-room apartment in the Bramford had become available.
Yeah.
And so I had already thought about that first line in one of the themes of the book, which is I don't know about themes, but one of the things that keeps happening is that over and over again, by the way, in case it wasn't clear, listeners, we're going to spoil the hell out of Rosemary's Baby.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. Yeah.
so, go pause and go read it and then come back. But uh, so one of the things that happens over and over again is there are so many times when Rosemary almost gets away
Hmm.
and then she doesn't. And I just realized right now, reading this over again, is that that is basically what is set up from the very first sentence, because the very first sentence, they were all, if they had taken that geometric white house on First Avenue, they would have been fine. I mean, there wouldn't have been a book, right? But that was what, that she was almost safe. And when you were talking about the old money versus new money and the Gothic element of the Bramford and all that stuff, is that I hadn't even thought about that element because the house that they don't move into, was a geometric white house. It's more modern. And
Yeah.
Rosemary doesn't want that. She wants the old fashioned. She wants the
Yes.
old. And and I confess that one of the reasons why I love Rosemary's Baby, the movie, is absolutely one of my horror comfort watches. I'll just watch a couple scenes in it. And my favorite scenes are the ones that involve that apartment because it's such a beautiful apartment and it's
It's
so.
gorgeous.
And Rosemary, from the very beginning, part of what does her in is that she sees herself as like, I'm supposed to be the homemaker, right? She's been keeping clippings since high school of what her kitchen's going to be like. And she's got these, we would probably put them in binders now. I mean, now we would just put it on Pinterest, right? But she's got the equivalent of her Pinterest file that she's been updating for years and years and years. And this old money, old gargoyle house with all kinds of history and secrets and stuff that's actually hidden in the closet. That's what gets her. It's so good. He's so mean.
It's it's already like I didn't think of it that way. The idea that she had an out and she didn't take it because she was seduced by the appeal of living in a place, which I would be too. Like I love the Dakota. I've never been to the Dakota. Like I've seen it from the street. I've never been inside it, but that is just absolutely like it used to be like a dream of mine. Like, oh, imagine living where John Lennon lived with his fur coats and his art and all this stuff. But then we get into the people who actually live there, and I'm going more by the film than the book because I've experienced both, but the film I remember better. Um, she meets the people who will sort of become uh, her best friends, whether she likes it or not, I guess is the way to put it. Um,
Oh boy.
Minnie and Roman Castevet, who are these elderly, rich, very sort of eccentric residents of the Dakota, who meet her when they basically meet her and get to know her over a corpse, right? Because she moves into the Brantford. They move in. They're getting ready to build this new life in this beautiful apartment, and uh, she meets this young woman named Terry, who's a dancer who lives with the Castevets. She's renting a room from the Castevets. She lives there, and they're like, "Oh, hey, we're both young women in this apartment full of all these older, richer people. This is nice. We can be friends." And then Terry falls to her death from, I think it's the seventh story, onto the street below, and it's viewed as a suicide, ruled a suicide, and that is how Minnie and Roman bond with Rosemary, because Rosemary was just becoming friends with Terry. Minnie and Roman obviously knew Terry. Um, and basically, it's again, this is another one of those things where like Rosemary could have maybe pushed back against this and didn't, because she sees she wants to be a nurturer. She wants to be a kind person. She sees Minnie in particular as a grieving woman who just lost
Hmm.
this young friend and is like, well, she needs a friend. She needs someone to talk to. I'm home all day. I'll be the person for Minnie to talk to. And Minnie, this is one of the sort of lesser elements of the overarching horror of the book, which, like you said, is misogyny and uh, gaslighting women and all of that stuff are the big themes. But the little the lowercase t themes in here are also that neighbors are awful, which I relate to deeply. Like we've all had those neighbors that just for whatever reason won't leave you alone, or which show up at the least opportune time to talk to you about something, and you're just like, I got a thing, I gotta go, something's on the stove, I can't, and they just don't take no for an answer. So it right away it sets my teeth on edge, because I'm just like, oh god, this woman, if she would just take the hint and back out of the apartment and leave
Hmm.
Rosemary alone for 5 minutes. But she doesn't, and Rosemary is too kind to
Yep.
say, I need you to go away now. And of course, what Rosemary doesn't know is that Guy has also become close friends with the Castevets, and Guy has, again, we're spoiling because I like talking about this with the dramatic irony intact,
Yes.
retroactive
Yes.
dramatic irony. uh, Guy has gone to the Castevets. The Castevets are like, you're an actor. You're looking for your big part. Like, we have ways of helping you get your big part. All you have to do is offer up your wife's womb for this demon baby that we would like to have. And Guy, being
Piece of shit.
an ambitious piece of shit in late 1960s New York City, he's an actor. He wants the spotlight. He wants success. And I'm sure he justifies it to himself by saying, like, I'll be able to give Rosemary the life she wants and she'll be
Mm-hmm.
happy. And she doesn't even have to know that any of the, which is another part of the story that's wild to me, is that the initial plan is to never tell her about any of this.
Yeah.
They're going to we're kind of jumping ahead to the end here, but I'd forgotten this until I was going back over the story. Their plan is we're gonna drug her, impregnate her with the spawn of Satan, take care of her during this pregnancy, do all of our Satan stuff, do the Dr. Satan's guide for baby care with her. And then we'll drug her again. She'll have the baby. We'll tell her the baby was stillborn. So then we get this baby, and then she can just go about the rest of her life. She can have another baby. She can do whatever she wants, and we'll just have this baby, and it's fine. We're renting this woman's body out for 10 months or whatever. And Guy is just like, yeah, great. If I get the part in the play, and he does. Like, the first sign, the first sign of something very wrong at the Bramford is Terry falling to her death. The second sign is Guy is auditioning for this role in this play. He doesn't get it. Another actor gets it, and then the other actor is mysteriously stricken blind,
Fine.
which means that Guy gets the part, and the part comes with prestige and money. And so he and Rosemary are like, great, we're on track. Let's make a baby, which then leads into one of the most horrifying sequences ever
On
committed to film.
film. Yep.
It's so, oh my gosh.
I
And
actually fast forward that every time. When I rewatch the movie, I never rewatch that scene.
it's rough. It's very rough, and it's made rougher. Like, again, the it's Ira Levin plotted this out so well, and Polanski's script uh, follows the line of that plotting so well that everything is so airtight. But there are all these little details that make it even more malicious for what Rosemary is going through, because we've already talked about they're going to drug and rape her. That is what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this whole dreamy, beautifully shot but terrifying sequence of Rosemary being raped by a demon, and she most of the time thinks that she's just like, while this is happening, it slowly dawns on her, because she eats the way she's drugged is Minnie makes them chocolate mousse in individual cups.
Yep.
And Rosemary says, mine has this weird aftertaste. And Guy is like, oh, don't complain. The woman made us free dessert. Don't complain about the taste. And so then she falls asleep and just sort of assumes in the midst of this dream sequence, like, I got food poisoning. I'm having a bad dream. This is a bad dream. And then she sees the devil's eyes and says, this is no dream. This is really happening.
This is really happening.
And then, to add to the horror of it, she wakes up the next day and she's got scratches all over her from Satan,
from the devil.
And she's like, where did the scratches, like, I don't remember. And Guy, by way of explaining it, says, oh, yeah, that was me. I got a little carried away. I decided to just have sex with you anyway, even though you were unconscious, because it was baby night and you wanted to conceive. So I just thought it would be okay.
So, I mean, there's a reason why I don't watch that sequence when it's when I rewatch. But one of the things, the themes that we were talking about, Rosemary being like, she's supposed to be provided for, right? So, the husband's the provider. And at the time, it was considered completely normal to, like, it wasn't even illegal marital rape was not
Yeah,
even
spousal
illegal at
rape.
that
Yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah.
All right. It wasn't until in the 80s in some places that it was considered that it was made illegal. And so that's just that's part of the abject horror. And even so, Rosemary, I was talking about how she almost gets away. There's a sequence that's in the book, but not the movie, and it makes sense for pacing. That is after this incident, Rosemary goes to her friend Hutch and borrows his cabin. He's got a cabin in upstate New York, and she
Oh
stays
yeah,
there
yeah.
alone for a few days to think because she's really unhappy with her marriage and with Guy. And part of what she's thinking about is uh, having been where he's basically confessed to having raped her and blithely, nonchalantly, not even with the sense that maybe there might have been something a little slightly problematic about that. He's just like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I was kind of loaded," right? And expects her to accept it. One of the other the gnarliest things that I didn't even pick up on the first couple watches too is the morning after she's been assaulted. He wakes her up to make him breakfast. That's
That's right.
that's what he does. And it's like when I first realized that was what was happening and I put it together, I remember wanting to like reach through my it would have been my laptop screen I was watching it on and strangle him and like throw him against the wall somehow. It's just but that's her goddamn job, right? Is to be the housekeeper and be the housewife. And so of course she's gotta, you've gotta wake up the servant, basically. Um, but then she goes off to this cabin to think, and she starts to look at her marriage in a different way and starts to think that, maybe it was slightly a little bit wrong what he did. And she's gonna give him a year. She's gonna tell him to shape up. And if not, she'll divorce him. And even though that's considered completely foreign in her family, she's like, I've already broken with my family so many times. Um, and so she's almost gotten away. And then she starts to doubt herself. And including like she thinks, oh, well, at first she's upset by him having assaulted her. And she says, that he had taken quote, only her body without her soul or self or she-ness, whatever it was he presumably loved. And she starts to be horrified by that. And then after a day or two in the cabin, she goes back on it and she calls him and she misses him and she's going to go back to him. And of course, what she doesn't know and we do is that she's already pregnant. So even if
Mhm.
she had decided to divorce him, there's no way she would have gotten an abortion. So she's stuck.
I think it's important here to first of all, a side note for listeners who may be like getting ready to type up a social media comment on this. We I'm sure are both fully aware of what happened in Roman Polanski's life in the years following this movie. The reasons why Roman Polanski is I'm sorry.
It's one of my notes that I wanted
Yeah.
to make sure not to forget about. But yes, carry
Yeah.
on, please.
Well, I mean, we can talk about it, but I'm like, that is a whole saga. Everything that happened to Roman Polanski, everything Roman Polanski did, the reason that Roman Polanski is not allowed in the United States anymore, is yes, very reminiscent of things that happen in Rosemary's Baby, which makes the film that much more frightening because you can sort of see the wheels turning almost. But what I really wanted to mention here was the performances in the film, because it takes a really I feel like Mia Farrow sometimes gets tagged with the same thing that Shelley Duvall gets tagged with in The Shining, this idea that
Mm.
her job is to be meek and quiet and react rather than act. But Mia Farrow's performance in the film is brilliant because we don't get that scene of her in the cabin where she's thinking about it, but you can constantly see those wheels turning in her eyes. She has very expressive eyes. She has that famous. She has a bob haircut when it starts, and then she goes super short by the end. So her eyes are very focused in her face, and you can always tell that each step of this process, she's kind of going like, is that really that this is what I'm supposed to do? Well, I guess it is because this is
Mhm.
what I signed up for. And John Cassavetes, who plays Guy, is handsome and charming and energetic, and is able to just sort of dance across these things.
Yep.
And you get a sense of their merit. Like, he's an actor, he's a performer. You get a sense that he drew her in through his sort of magnetic abilities as a person able to communicate and empathize and do all that stuff. Whether or not he actually has empathy, he is able to feel like he does. Um,
Question.
I'm sorry, what?
That's a good question. Does he have? I don't think he does. I think he
I don't think he
has.
does either.
I think he has the kind of, I'm not even sure if we could call it empathy. I think he has the ability to anticipate what someone else might be thinking or feeling
Yes.
because he does it all the time. It's how he manages to string her along and to keep her snared. And it's how he's an effective actor. But I think he's completely missing the ability to extend and therefore I'm going to care about you because I know what you're going through. I think he's completely devoid of that. And I think he's a psychopath. I think he's an ambitious, malicious psychopath.
Which brings us to like the interesting dynamic this movie sets up, because okay, so all of this happens. We're done talking about the absolute worst part of this movie. Now we're going to talk about other stuff. I promise, listeners.
Yep.
So she's pregnant. He has to go off to work because he got this role in a play. So every day he goes off to rehearse and work on the play, which leaves her alone. And who else would sweep in to take care of her but Minnie and Roman Castevet? And Minnie is played by Ruth Gordon, who is absolutely brilliant in this movie.
Yep.
Like, she is the scene stealer. She is she is an amazing, obnoxious neighbor. And then her husband, Roman Castevet, is played by Sidney Blackmer, who is the opposite in many ways. It's very much, Minnie and Roman are very similar to me to Rosemary and Guy, because Roman is very charismatic, very put together, very in command, very like, I am in charge of the moment. You don't need to worry about anything. I've got it. And Minnie is all energy. She is just a ball of fire that streaks around the room constantly, constantly talking, constantly moving, constantly like she brings in all the witchy stuff. She's the one, because she's so forceful and so energetic. She comes in and says, "Here, wear this necklace. Your dead friend wore it, and but you can wear it, and it'll be a good luck charm for you." Which is an amazing thing to tell somebody. Like, hey, this was around the neck of the woman who fell to her death. It'll be good luck for you, though.
Right, and we cleaned off the blood, by the way. It's fine.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I'm sure there would have been blood just based on what had to have happened to Terry. So we're going from assault to murder. But this is a horror podcast. But
yes,
you were talking about Minnie, and I had. This is why we like talking about movies that we love with other fans, because there are so many layers that you're adding that I hadn't thought about. Like, if things had just gone the way Minnie and Roman had planned, you're right. That absolutely would have been Guy and Rosemary later on. And part of the reason why it frays is because Rosemary has some feminist ideas and Minnie didn't, right? And so there's a scene that I was thinking of when you were talking about Roman and his charisma, where we first meet him in his domain. And in the movie, it's Minnie is fussing, as you said, as ball of energy. She's got her, I think it's like a pink apron. She's got this kind of fussy, very completely impractical apron that she's wearing around her waist, and she's serving them and telling them where to sit. But at the other end of the room, just sitting majestically in this enormous chair, dominating the shot and dominating the room, is Roman.
Yeah.
And the light is kind of off, and I think either the chair is red or the curtains are red. There's this, this ominous red light coming from him. It's so effective. And yes, he's the leader. And I think part of what is really fun about this is that about why Roman and Minnie are so wonderful villains is because Minnie is normal Midwestern, right? Rosemary came from the Midwest. Minnie came from the Midwest. I think she comes from Brushy something, Oklahoma, if I remember right in the book. She comes from this tiny town in Oklahoma.
Mm.
And I just pissed off a bunch of people who were going to say, excuse me, Oklahoma is not the Midwest. I suppose I mean the Midwest in a conceptual sense of like there's this small town, white coated, middle small town Americana,
What we would now call flyover country.
which is a very problematic phrase. But
It
yes,
is.
like
It is.
there's
Yes.
Rosemary left that world. She
Yeah.
left her very Catholic family and is kind of estranged from them because she dared to live out on her own and move to a big city, and she's an agnostic, and she left those things, and Minnie represents those things. And it's, I think, part of just the fun of what Ira Levin is doing is, and what Roman Polanski was doing when he adapted it, is let's make this woman appear in every way, Minnie appear in every way to be a white middle class Midwestern fussy housewife, the kind who like is always pushing her casserole recipes at you and making you drink her damn tea, except for the Satanism.
Yeah.
And that's what gets Rosemary, is because she doesn't fit the stereotype of what the devil would maybe look like. She looks, wholesome. And the other thing is Rosemary's vulnerable. You were talking about how Minnie comes in and just insinuates and won't leave.
Yeah.
I mean, part of Rosemary's loneliness, it's just that she's lonely. She's not connected to her family anymore. They almost don't talk to her because she has left the patriarchal constraints of the Catholic Church. And there's this interesting question that I am very curious what you think about. It'll take a second to set it up, but when I saw the movie, I remember my older sister saying, well, to me, it feels like Rosemary's Baby is about what happens when you leave the confines and the protection of the Catholic Church, and that makes you vulnerable to Satan, right? So that would seem to be a very kind of hand-wringing about what happens when we leave the Catholic Church, and hand-wringing against agnosticism. And that would seem to be kind of an anti-feminist stance. And then you have little moments that seem to underscore that, like, for example, the fact that Rosemary, when she puts the book about Satanism on the shelf, she puts it in between the Kinsey report. That's in both the book and the movie. That's where she shelves it, is the Kinsey report, and that's not an accident. But then you have what seems to be a very pro-feminist argument, in the sense that what really is snaring Rosemary, and what she's really vulnerable to, is the patriarchy. She's got no legal status. She's, at that time, her right to get a bank account is completely dependent on whether the bank officer wants to give her one or not, right? There's no fault divorce. She's basically her husband's to do with in many ways. He can make her medical decisions. He can institutionalize her. That's at the end, the threat of, if you keep talking about witchcraft or witches, we're going to put you in a mental institution. So that seems to be a very pro-feminist thread. And maybe they're not contradictory, but what sense do you make of all that?
Well, I don't. The lapsed Catholic thing, or the idea that the film is a meditation on the dangers of leaving the church, that doesn't hold as much water for me, simply because we're talking about a Jewish novelist and a Jewish filmmaker. So I don't know that so much is there. I do think it speaks to. I think I lean toward the more pro-feminist argument, because, like you said, you brought up the Kinsey report. So in looking at Rosemary's entire sort of picture, she is absolutely a woman of the moment in 1968. And the film is very much concerned with, for lack of a better term, new age culture, the way that it permeated America in the late 1960s. And Rosemary is she's caught between. She loves the idea, or at least she tells herself she loves the idea of, I'm going to be a traditional housewife and mother. I'm going to love my husband and love my kids and take care of them, and that is going to be my life, and it's going to be beautiful. Um, and yet, she has a copy of the Kinsey Report. She is interested in whether or not she would ever practice it is something else altogether. But she finds all of these witchcraft discussions and the secret history of the building and all that stuff. She finds it interesting. She wants to know more about these things. And yet she clings to these sort of traditional things. She is caught between the tradition and the new. And I think that is sort of the ultimate tension that hangs over the last moment in the movie when she is standing by the bassinet and Roman is trying to talk her into, like, look, you don't have to, you could kill that kid. Like, you could throw that kid out the window. You could walk away. You could ignore all of this. Or you could stay and be a mother. And don't you want to be a mother? Don't you want to care for this sweet little baby that came out of your body, Rosemary? And she has that moment where she starts to rock the bassinet. She starts to just kind of go, oh, well, it is a baby. And he is crying. And I guess he does need his mother. So maybe I stay. And we're left wondering, is she going to stay by that bassinet, or is she going to set that bassinet on fire one day? We don't know. So yeah, I tend to go with the more pro-feminist thing, because I think that she is someone who is trying to be, she wants to be liberated while also have the sort of warm fuzzy things that she remembers from her youth. So yeah, it's a fascinating sort of dichotomy, that the way that she has to straddle these two lines all the time.
Again, this is why it's really fun to talk about this with you, because because you're making explicit what's been in my head a lot when I was thinking about this, which is that she is very much, I mean, it's clear that she's very much a kid of the 60s, right? That she's a product of the 60s. And, you have the Pope visiting New York at the same time that Satan conceives the baby. Like, it's just it's so stark, the way that those things are contrasted. And there really was apparently, I don't know if it was Time or Newsweek, but there really was apparently a 1965 magazine cover called "Is God Dead?" And people really were starting to leave the Catholic Church in large numbers in the 60s. And I think, for example, women stopped considering going into a convent as one of the career paths that was open to them, because they had more other options, right? And so membership in convents started to drop off in the mid 60s. And so she really is a product of the 60s, but I appreciate this way you're talking about it, about she's caught between two worlds. And I think that really is what kind of makes her vulnerable. And when you were talking about at the end, when Roman is talking to her, where I think Roman knows that she's not gonna throw her baby out the window. I think that he knows that ultimately that's not who she is. And he says to her, well, aren't you his mother? And it's so monstrous, because he set her up. I mean, we're not going to talk about that scene again, but he knows exactly what has happened to her, and that's supposed to be this honor. And then this doesn't make it into the movie, but she says, his name is not Adrian. His name is Andrew, and he's not going to wear black. And she has finally stood up to these people, and it's too fucking late, because she's already given birth to this baby. And apparently he did write a sequel that I didn't even touch.
Oh God. Oh yeah.
I don't want to know. I really would rather remember him the way that I knew him best, and just leave it with that. Is she? Because I think she is.
It's funny because there are two sequels. There's a sequel to the movie and a sequel to the book, because it took, like, Ira Levin wrote a book called Son of Rosemary, which is, I will not talk about the plot, but it's not good. It was published in 1997, so 30 years after Rosemary's Baby. But in between, in the mid 70s, there's a TV movie called Whatever Happened to Rosemary's Baby
Oh shit,
that
that's
is
right.
that I have actually never seen. That's a sequel to the movie that ignores a lot of Ira
Mm,
Levin's stuff, and Ira Levin didn't really have anything to do with it. There's also a prequel movie called Apartment 7A that came out a couple years ago. That's about it's Terry's story. It
mhm,
has a great cast, but the only really good thing I can say about it. Like Julia Garner is the star, and I love
mhm.
her, but I didn't. That movie didn't land for me. Um, before we have to start wrapping up, though, I want to talk about the kind of middle section of this story because we've talked about the inciting incidents and the catalyst and all of that stuff, and we're talking about the denouement, if you will. But we're not talking about as much the primary driving engine of the horror in this film, particularly, which is the tension and paranoia that consume Rosemary's life once she gets pregnant. Because it starts with like, oh, you're pregnant. Oh, it's amazing. Oh, we're all going to take care of you. This is so wonderful, joyous, blessed event. So great. And then she starts losing weight for reasons that she
Mhm.
can't really explain. And she has horrible stomach cramps, which I should like, I can say this now because I put it on the internet. My wife is pregnant right now and she is having,
Congratulations.
oh, thank you. Uh, she is having a lot of pain, like muscle pain and weird nerve things and stuff that happens during pregnancy. Stuff that's like she had versions of this with our first kid too. But um, so everything, like you said earlier, everything can sort of be written off as like that's just a thing that happens in pregnancy sometimes. It's okay. You'll be fine. Just weather the storm. It'll be okay. And I should mention here too that she has to see a doctor that the Castevets recommended. She can't
Mhm.
go to her own OB anymore because that would offend Minnie and Roman. So she can't do that. Although she does start placing calls to him later, going like, "Hey, what's going on? Am I okay? Am I going to die?" Um, but basically, she just keeps asking questions, trying to sort of understand why am I feeling this way? Why am I losing weight? Why don't I seem to see my friends anymore? Why do I feel like I'm being kept here? Um, why does it feel like people are always watching me? And everyone's just like, well, you're a pregnant lady. You're the star of the show. Everyone wants to pay attention to you. You're glowing. Who wouldn't want to watch you? And it just becomes this slow descent into absolute madness because she can no longer tell what is real and what is not real. And it builds for me, it builds to my favorite scene in the movie from a pure horror craft standpoint, which
Mm,
is and we can talk about it. I want to ask you about your favorite moments in a second, but I have to talk about this because it gives me
yes.
it almost sends me out of the room every time I watch the movie because it makes me so uncomfortable. There's a scene where she goes to a phone booth to make a call because she worries that she can't make a call in the house because someone will overhear. So she goes to this phone booth, and there's a man standing outside the phone booth waiting to use it. It turns out that's all he's doing. It turns out that he's just a guy on the street, needs to use the payphone, is just waiting for her to get done with the payphone. And he's trying to be polite and pleasant. So when she makes eye contact with him, he smiles at her and he just kind of he mimes like, "Oh, I just need to
Hmm.
use the phone." That first of all, that man is William Castle, who
Yes.
produced this movie, but also is best known for directing very gimmick laden B movie classics like 13 Ghosts and House on Haunted Hill. Um,
That's right.
legendary figure in like 1940s, 1950s, 60s horror movies. The Tingler with Vincent Price, all that stuff. I think he wanted to direct this at one point, and the
Hmm.
producers and the studio was like, we're gonna maybe get a more prestigious name. This kid from Europe, he just made this vampire movie that people like. We're gonna try that. Um, but it's William Castle, so was a very large man. He's very tall, very kind of not heavy, but like solid looking. and he's just sort of smiling at her from outside this phone booth. And every time I watch it, I'm like, this is my nightmare. The idea that because all she wants in that moment is privacy.
Yes.
She wants to talk to her doctor in private with no prying eyes or ears. And this guy is just standing there, and he does not bear her any ill will at all. He doesn't know her. He doesn't know what she's going through. He's just waiting to use the payphone. But it's such a good that the movie has trained you at that point to go, what's this guy's deal? What is he about to do? Oh my God. Oh my God. So that's my favorite scene in Rosemary's Baby. So what are your favorite moments in Rosemary's Baby?
That is an excellent one. And it's because it really does, it exemplifies how, again, what she's trying to do is get away, right?
Yeah.
She wants to get away. And and I don't know if she thinks for a second that he might be Roman, probably not, but I think she does think that someone has come for her, and that they're, going to nab her as soon as she gets out of the phone booth, right? But you're talking about favorite scenes. I'm having trouble picking just one. I mean, I feel like there's a sequence that I'm thinking about, though, that there's a crack bit that's just wonderful. So it's in the middle, and they have had Rosemary has decided to have a party. And you were talking about the isolation and paranoia, right? It's what abusive relationships do, right? The abuser isolates their victim. And Rosemary has absolutely been kept isolated. Like, she's so isolated that there's not even a phone in her bedroom. Guy picks up the phone when Hutch calls her and brings her the phone and plugs it in, and then unplugs it again when the phone conversation is done. So she's completely isolated. And she finally gets this tiny flash of feeling like I've got to connect with my friends again. So she has this party, and Guy is freaking out that she's talking to her friends, right? They've been isolating her the whole time. They've been keeping her from any real source of independent information. Like, the first thing her doctor says to her is, please don't read books. And then the second thing he says is, don't talk to your friends. And it's, we're watching this in the modern era and going, oh my God, those are red flags. Like, that's what abusers do, is they tell you to not listen to anybody else and they isolate you. But she doesn't know this. And so she has this party, and her friends come in and they notice just how awful she is. And she desperately needed to hear this from them, because she knows that she's awful, but everybody else has been. Gaslight is a vastly overused word, but in this case it matters, because she doesn't have any independent way to access reality. They're telling her she's fine. She knows she's in horrible pain. She knows she's losing weight. She knows something is very, very wrong, and they're all telling her it's fine. And then her friends come in, and for a second, again, she almost gets away.
Yeah.
And the scene in the movie is in the kitchen. It's this fount of domesticity that has been Rosemary's domain, and her friends are doing what women do a lot. They are gossiping in the kitchen. And when you rewatch the scene, you see something tiny that I only picked up on after like 5 or 6 views. So 2 of the friends are surrounding her. They're letting her cry. Guy is trying to get in. And the camera moves with one of her friends, turns to the door, and then we get what that does is direct our attention to this friend who is locking the door, and that Guy is finally locked out, and they're telling her, sorry, they're telling him, sorry, you can't get in, I just need to wash some glasses, use the bathroom. So they are desperately trying to support her and to give her this tiny lifeline of reality and support that she desperately needs. And it works. She determines she's going to see another doctor. And then I will never know, and I'd love to hear what you think about this. She's having this very loud argument about, I'm going to go to another doctor. There's something wrong. She is hinting that she's finally beginning to see that there's something. She's going to try to maybe break away of the stranglehold that her husband and the Castevets have on her. And she's having this argument so loudly that I think the Castevets could possibly hear through the wall. Because again, talk about isolation and paranoia, right? She can't even have a conversation in some of these rooms without them hearing her. Whether it's a coincidence that just then the pain stops, or whether the Castevets heard and somehow did something, or some other third explanation, I will never know, and I've never figured it out. But if the pain had stopped, then she would have gone to another doctor, and then she might have figured out what was wrong. And another of the many times where she almost gets away. But what's your thoughts?
Well, it's interesting because there are several moments in the film, and it begins with the actor being struck blind so Guy can get the job. There are all these little moments where it's just like something happens at exactly the right time. One other is their friend Hutch, who is mostly a figure on the telephone in the movie. Like he pops up and he's the one trying to warn Rosemary, like, hey, there's something weird about these people, and you maybe want to look into it. And he slips into a coma and later dies before he can explain all of this research he's done to her. So she's kind of left to do her own. So that happens, and then there's this where like she's in all this pain and she's realizing like I got to get out of here. She starts pouring the quote unquote health drink that Minnie makes for her. She starts pouring those down the drain, thinking that maybe something in there is making her sick. And then it's not just that the pain stops, she feels the baby move.
Yes, that's right.
So she is in, and I think I like thinking that that's just like Satan being puppet master, just sort of watching, because that's the other ultimate thing about all of this is like all of these people are under the watchful eye of something bigger than them, who's masterminded every bit of this. So I like the idea that Satan is there and just like, oh, no, let me just give you a little flutter of something, and now you'll feel better and we'll move on. You mentioned the door, and doors are so important in this movie because, I mean, the way that Polanski shoots doorways and doors, because there's always some sort of conflict happening at a door. Whether it's Minnie brings one of her friends by and is like, "Can we just come in just for a minute?" And Rosemary's like, I got stuff to do. I can't. And no. It'll just be a minute. And they come in, or them locking a Guy out for a minute while they talk to Rosemary. And then, of course, it culminates in Rosemary finally finding the secret door that links her apartment to the Castevets' apartment, where they have this sort of, they're just having a baby shower, basically, without the mother. They're just all having cocktails and just like, yeah, baby, we did it. Yay, everybody. So I think that the Castevets could probably hear them, but I don't know if Roman is powerful enough to do that on his own. But that's a wonderful scene. Rosemary's Baby, a pretty great film if you haven't seen it. And if you haven't read Muneca yet by our friend Cynthia Gomez, you should absolutely go pick that up. It is available right now wherever you get your books. Cynthia, I'm sure we could keep talking about Rosemary's Baby for another 4 hours. We might have to have you back for part 2 or something at some point. But for now, before we let you go, will you let everyone know where they can find you online and what you have coming up?
Absolutely. So I have a very janky website that I like to joke looks like it was a 7-year-old school project. And then, to be fair, it doesn't look like a 7-year-old school project, maybe a 9-year-old school project. But it's cynthiasaysboo.wordpress.com. And I'm also on the same handle at Blue Sky, Cynthia Says Boo. Technically, there is an Instagram page, but I only use it to lurk. So you won't find anything on there. So don't bother. And so those are the 2 main things. And I don't know if you want to edit this out and put it in the show notes, or if you want to leave it as my closing thought, but I didn't get a chance to say enough. I'm very glad you mentioned Roman Polanski in the context of
how
ironic it is
yes,
that it's a movie about how horrible it is to sexually assault someone, among many other things. And it's Roman fucking Polanski who made it. Like, Yes, it cannot not be said that Roman Polanski is a rapist, and that I can think of one of my fictional characters, Huitzol, who I would love to sick on Roman Polanski if he ever came back into the US, or maybe Grandma from Muneca.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, let's let Grandma have a turn with her magic at Roman Polanski. That would be a wonderful image. So yeah, may he die in a fire.
I will also say, if you want an overview, if you want to, like, obviously, like, you can go read Wikipedia or whatever if you want, but if you want a kind of artfully done overview of everything we're talking about with Polanski, like the afterlife that Polanski had, and it's very appropriate because it uses the music from Rosemary's Baby. There's a documentary called Roman Polanski Wanted and Desired, directed by Marina Zenovich, that came
Uh-huh.
out in when did it come out? 2008. It came out in 2008, and it is perhaps a little more sympathetic to Polanski than
Hmm.
I would like, but it is a very good overview of, like, the not only what he did, but the weird backroom legal dealings that allowed him to eventually escape prison. Uh, it's a very good documentary. It will also make you angry, so, content warning. But yes, it's important to acknowledge that, and it's still, Rosemary's Baby will forever be a problematic fave because of what Polanski did. Uh, but, fantastic movie, and I think we had a fantastic conversation talking about it, and I look forward to having you back on to talk about something else sometime. But for now, our guest has been the wonderful Cynthia Gomez. Cynthia, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you very much for having me. This is one of my favorite kinds of conversation to have. So thank you for giving me a chance to have it.
My pleasure. Thanks once again to Cynthia Gomez for being on the show. Muneca is available right now wherever you get your books. Highly recommend picking it up. It's a quick read. It is a very layered, textured, beautiful Gothic read if you love Gothic fiction, and especially if you love the Latinx Gothic work that's come out in recent years. We talked about some of that on the show. Definitely pick it up. Cynthia is a rising star, and I can't wait to read whatever she does next. And go be sure to follow her on social media to keep track of everything else she has going on. And if you want to keep track of everything that we have going on, the easiest way to do that is to find us on Blue Sky. We are at scareshapedus.bsky.social over there. That is where you will find new guest announcements, new episodes of the show, giveaways, bunch of other stuff. I just put up a big thread congratulating all of the 2025 Bram Stoker Award winners who were guests on the show in the past year. We had 5 of them. Stephen Graham Jones, Nathan Ballingrud, John Langan, Becky Spratford, and our friend, the OG, Clay McLeod Chapman, all won Stokers. So we linked to all their episodes. If you missed those, you can go to our Blue Sky page, click those, listen to the Stoker winners, most of whom are talking about the work for which they won a Stoker in those episodes. So that's a lot of fun. Follow us on Blue Sky. We're also on Facebook, where the Scares That Shaped Us over there. We're the Scares That Shaped Us on YouTube as well. You get every episode over there. If you prefer to follow your podcasts on YouTube, head over there, like, and subscribe. If you like the show, please do us a favor and tell your friends about us. And if you are so inclined, head over to the podcasting platform of your choice and leave us a 5-star review. That helps us a whole lot to get more listeners. I also have a little bit of an announcement here. I am launching another podcast. Matthew, where do you find the time? I don't know. I'm losing my mind, but I had a good idea and I really wanted to do another podcast. There's not much out there yet. There is a Blue Sky account. It is a podcast called Final Cuts. The premise behind Final Cuts is we are a desert island horror movie podcast, and we're going to invite a bunch of cool horror people on, and they're going to tell us if they were stranded on a desert island and they could only bring 3 horror movies with them, which films are they taking and why. We've already started recording episodes. We're hoping to launch later this summer. So if you want to get all the details on when you can catch the first episode of that, which we've recorded, and it is a banger, you can follow us on Blue Sky at finalcutspodcast.bsky.social. We will have more news over there in the coming weeks. We appreciate your support so much. That is it for me this week. I appreciate everyone bearing with us over last week when we did not have a show. We were the stomach virus household for a little while, and we had to cancel some interviews. We're rebooking them. Everything's fine. Everybody's healthy now. But yeah, we missed a week because, shit happens, sometimes literally. That's it for me this week. We're back next week with a brand new episode. In the meantime, take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. I'm Matthew Jackson, and this is The Scares That Shaped Us.